Gee, Sensei, what are you gonna draw today?
Oh, it's gonna be less of a drawing and more of a painting thing.
Have you prepared your two thin coats?
No, well, let's see here. Here I have the minis. I have various paints here, and to have the thin coats, we're gonna need water.
What if you don't add two thin coats, but 50 very thin coats?
Depends upon exactly how thin, because if you make things too thin, it will just go into the recesses, but not overall coverage, which is kind of an issue.
It will go into the dimension where also your money goes.
Yeah, I've got 4 different minis available as options for painting now. I've got an old Warhammer Fantasy, but also for a Vampire Lord on Armored Horse. I've got a 40k Nurgle Lord of Contagion. I've got a 40k new type Space Marine, Captain in Gravis armor. And I've got a generic mini for D&D purposes. Some kind of sorceress. And I'm gonna leave it up to our viewers to decide which one of those I'm gonna be painting today.
You gotta go with the Ultramarines. Don't you know the Ultramarines are the greatest and the baddest, the bestest, the strongest. They win. Always.
Well, none of them is gonna be Ultramarines. Yeah, 2 of these, the 2 that I've already got a bit of painting work done, will actually be for my friendly local game store. I painted those miniatures for them before, well, different ones, but they got stolen, so...
Also, your mic kind of sounds like you no longer have the technology for it. It's long lost, and now you have this shitty Voxcaster.
That's probably that I've got my microphone too far away from my mouth again. That tends to happen. Oh, the pole is very evenly spread so far.
I see 2 for the Space Marine. Space.
Yeah. The colors that I'm planning to do for this one is gonna be, it's Crimson Fist, so it's mostly dark blue, with some red for like helmet, hands, a bit of the cloak. Probably some gold as well, because he is like a captain, he's gonna have some bling.
You know, for them being called the Crimson Fists, they aren't that crimson.
But their fists are crimson, that's the thing.
So basically, they could go as Rainbow Warriors, as long as their fists are crimson. I see 2 Vampire, 2 Space Marine, 1 Dirty Space Marine, 1 Spellcaster Chick.
The thing is, a bit earlier I saw 3 for Space Marine, so someone is altering results.
Am I the only one who was clicking on the Dirty Space Marine?
Putting them up here in order of voting as well to make that a bit more clear. Although there are out of focus like this. But the autofocus does not work for these close-ups, so I've got it set up for focus at the position where I'll generally have them while painting.
Yeah, I think the Spellcaster Chick is just kind of small, so everyone is just nah. Not making the Ultra Smurf a Blood Raven with a gifted Ultramarine armor.
Well, it's not going to be an Ultra Smurf. Not even an Ultra Smurf successor.
How do the Blood Ravens get their Primaris? Where do they get the gene seed from? Like, what gene seed are they using?
Oh, we don't know. They just had when the AtMath representative came to them to supply them with their Primaris, they apparently already had Primaris.
They stole them.
And there are some totally legitimate gene seed source in the official new Primaris only chapters as well. Like the Sons of the Phoenix, who are supposedly an Imperial Fist successor. With a white and purple color scheme, an obsession with perfection.
This is like one of those things where you look at that and you're thinking, is Games Workshop hinting at something? I'm sure it will not happen this decade.
It's past Vampire Arena. I don't think I have any Blood Angels lying around ready to be painted.
The only thing Games Workshop is hinting at is that the end times are upon us again.
This time for a different setting.
It's 40k all the time.
Yeah, fair enough.
And oh hey, the vote war is going back and forth a bit apparently.
And I voted.
Oh, 5 for the vampire.
And 5 for the Marine.
I mean, we're talking about bloodsuckers anyway, so let's paint a bloodsucker.
Well, looks like 2 options have been eliminated at the very least.
No, Manurgle.
Uh,
Also known as the Y Chaos God.
He's the jolly guy.
Yeah, Papa Nurgle is great. Like, how can you not like the guy?
Well, yeah, Nurgle has the ability to turn normal Skaven into, oh my god, take it away, don't let him go close, ah! Skaven. Fucking Plague Monks, every time.
Yeah, I know. Advertised. Like, I feel such disgust for Plague Monks that I never feel in them. Like, just... Cold Machines? Yeah. Plague Monks? No.
Scryer is the superior clan.
Kratos
Yeah.
Kratos is not so difficult to beat like the Berserkers that are in Vermintide 2. But the fucking Plague Monks, every time they come...
I mean, let me put it this way, like, in tabletop terms, Plague Monks were pretty much one of the few units Skaven player could rely on because of Frenzy, and I think, like, the leadership was insane for the Skaven. The other one was Storm Vermin. And,
Storm Vermin! Really?
Okay, I'm gonna give the poll 1.5 more minutes and then I'm gonna call it. And
Yeah.
if it's a tie, I'm just gonna roll a die for it.
acceptable.
But what die are you gonna roll?
Well,
Well,
some
you
kind of
gonna
d6 probably. I'm gonna have to see what I've got lying around here.
Yeah, are you gonna roll the die that you deserve or the die that you need? The die that you need usually has 6 on all sides.
Well, I've got one of our local Minty Gamers has had a custom-made dice that was very appropriate in many situations.
Can
It has
you
the same
make
thing
one-
written on all sides.
Can you make
Don't
a
care.
die where the 1 is replaced with a pink Wojak screaming?
I think that should be possible. There are companies that let you make custom dice with stuff on the 1 or the 6 side. So if you supply them with a pink Wojak, you can get those dice made.
Oh, Space Marine is now in the lead with a 6.
Let's see, and our time limit is here. Yep, Space Marine wins.
God dang it!
Oh, we won!
Bitch.
We're the best Space Marine chapter in the world!
Shut up,
So,
Blood Raven.
this is what I'm gonna be painting. And for this boyo, we're gonna start off with this.
2 thin coats?
We're gonna start with 1 coat. And I do just realize that my pellet is out of shot. Let's see if I can.
Has anyone noticed that you could probably use those miniature holders also as a butt plug?
Yes, there have been
Oh
many
my lord.
comments made about that.
I actually used the model holder, the one with the magnifying glass, for painting. But I have not painted in like a long time. After the bike accident, I don't think I've taken up a brush.
So yeah, here we have some thin paint. Let's see if it's the right consistency.
Marka, do you do it like me and basically use a very thin paint and apply it like 3 or 4 times, or like?
Generally, like 1 or 2 times. I thin it a bit, but not ridiculously so. Because I want to keep some kind of pace going as well.
Yeah. I tend to like to do it like thinly as possible and then apply it many times. It gives a little bit more control for me.
I notice also in Germany you can buy the 1 single Space Marine for like something like €6. It's something I can afford, then I'm gonna paint it. But with stuff I have lying around.
Well, if you go to like a Games Workshop store, I think you can actually just express your interest and they'll give you a free Space Marine and you can then paint it with their paints.
Yeah, in general, they Games Workshop stores actually evolve like the official ones that they actually want to teach you how to paint them. Nowadays, back in the day though, no.
Right. Back in the day, it would depend on the manager.
Yeah, but I kind of want to destroy something that I paid for. That makes it better.
You can do it in store as well. You can immediately see their responses as well.
Do you want me to send you like a really old Skaven that you want that you could destroy?
Oh yeah, that would be perfect. It's just I find random ways to paint them, and it will be stuff like, okay, now I'm gonna.
And it gets worse. I don't just have the Games Workshop model holder. I have the one for the big bases as well.
The big one.
That's for the cavalry, right?
Cavalry, monster stuff. Like if I was gonna paint that Lord of Contagion, I'd be using that bigger one because yeah.
Is it big? Is it big enough for something like Tyranid monsters?
It's big enough for Dreadnought, so I think it will be big enough for Tyranid monster.
Yeah.
I'm gonna change the angle on this a bit, see if I can.
Don't forget that some Tyranid monsters are fat bitches.
So, out of curiosity, like, are you going to have the model with a lot of gold finish, or is it just going to be a little less sparkly? I mean, it is a Smurf, but
Well, it's not a Smurf.
oh, it's not a Smurf.
Crimson Fists.
Ah.
It's part of the local game store's demo army. As I was saying earlier, I've already painted one, this sculpt once for them, but it got fucking stolen. So I'm working on a replacement.
Who could have taken it? A bloody magpies again. This is how they get their Primaris.
Echoes them. Don't worry, it's safely stored in some kind of relic vault.
Oh no, it's the Blood Wraith. It's close to a reliquary. Already done so.
And all of that stuff is already gone. Fucking
Hello.
ass-
Ah, how did you get in? The door was wide open.
Why is there a
Fucking
Melta-shaped
asshole
hole in the
shit.
door?
Accidents. It was probably the guardsman.
Always blame
And
the
not-
guardsman.
Yeah, always blame the guardsman. Oh god, that reminds me of Slot Patrol always, that one scene. Which unit are you from, Space Marine? This is an award presented to the brightest of Imperial soldiers. Thanks, Space Marine. Blam. Oh god, I miss actually when TG did stuff like that. It's not the same.
Yeah, places change, and there's some shit of the stuff back then that I don't miss, but there is stuff that I do miss.
Yeah, I don't miss that fan fiction involving that Vindicator assassin and which Farseer was it again? Taldir?
I think it was Taldir.
Yeah.
Oh no, Makar, right? Makar Taldir. I think it's Taldir, but
It had to be Taldir because that was around the time Dark Crusade rolled out.
Well, I'm gonna go check in for Blood Bowl. I'm gonna yell at Klobitz to do our match.
okay.
I'm finally retired. I don't have...
Which won't take very long because I'm playing vampires without rerolls.
Alright, that's the Cripple League, right?
It's the Cripple League.
Okay.
Where you can't buy any new players?
You can't buy new players, but you can't buy rerolls.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, for these minis, like the Space Marine and the Traitor, I did a bit of pre-work earlier this week, so I had them base coated. I had the drivers with a dark metal and a lighter metal. In fact, I've got the paints here and a black wash.
Base coated them with metal.
Gets me all the metal stuff done and a bit of appreciating, so I can see where the other stuff is gonna have to be.
That's a very interesting thing to do, really. I have not thought of that.
Also helps that if I miss anything, it's like, oh, metal. That works for power armor.
Yeah, that works for power armor, and it also works for like any kind of like heavily armored unit for fantasy, as they want to call it now, Age of Sigmar.
Yeah, also for Lord of the Rings minis, I often did, like for the Uruk, I did it with metals as well, but darker metals. But for Uruk scouts and stuff and regular orcs, I did it with browns.
Yeah, that would actually fit better.
And for the regular Uruk, there were like all that heavy armor and stuff in the dark metallics. Going with metallic dry brushes and and black washes to start with to appreciate all of that and get most of the model covered is generally pretty useful. I get a bit too close there. I'm gonna move my light source a little bit so I get a bit closer.
There's a little bit of tricky stuff here. Right.
Yeah, the color bit.
I still have like a ton of Skaven to paint. That's my bane. I wanted a Horde army.
I picked up Skaven for Age of Sigmar because I did not want to play a hard army.
Well, yeah, but you know, I'm a purist.
And I went
Grognard.
I went Clan's Crier, so...
Well, yeah, Clan Scryer is great for that, but still, like, in the original rules, you had to have, like, at least 2 units of Clan Rats, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, something like that.
And a good unit of Clan Rat is about a 30. So... It was, I think the list I had was about 2 units of 30 Clan Rats, 1 Storm Vermin, 20 Storm Vermin, and Red Ogres, Jezzails, and Warp Lightning Cannon. Oh, and Warp Fire Throwers, of course.
Gotta get them burning.
It's one of the best units you could get, except for the mishap roll. It's always except for the... I think actually Jezzails were pretty much the best you could get given their armor penetration. But it's it's still like a Skaven army, despite it being a Horde army, is not good against other Horde armies because their leadership is just completely dogshit. But against like something that is like high value, like elves, Skaven are perfect. They can wreck very expensive units easily.
Yeah, all the weird scryer tech and just drowning them in expensive bodies.
Oh yeah, Warp Lightning Cannon is still possibly one of the best. Well, it's not really an artillery weapon. It's more like I would say like a railgun, basically. A railgun that is best pointed at the most expensive unit in the field.
Yeah, I'm working on the blues right now. So once that's covered, I'll probably grab a dark red next and block out those areas first, and then go for a highlight on this blue. For the other minis I did that as a dry brush, but for this I think I'm going to be a bit more careful with it.
You know, I do see now that metallic undercoat is shining a little bit through that blue, and it really gives that nice it's not that same matte feel like if you would use a matte undercoat.
Yeah, it's gonna have like a satin varnish spray at the end, but...
Yeah, exactly, and usually like they were recommending like spray on varnish. I think this effect looks better. It's more natural.
It's like a natural bonus of pre-shading in some way as well.
Yeah. That too.
If you have thin coats of paint, the pre-shading will sort of shine through, meaning you don't need to highlight as heavily.
It's if you really want to make your model look good, you basically need to learn how to pre-shade and highlight properly to make them look good.
Pre-shading is far from required, but it's just kind of a handy step. Because even if you paint over everything thickly enough, it means you can see the details before you apply paint to them. And yes, I did rubber some large flat surfaces, but that's because I'm painting over them again.
Last thing I've painted was were models for what was it called? It was a steampunk game.
War Machine?
No. Give me a second. I'll actually look it up. It was made by Spartan Games.
Dystopian Wars.
Dystopian Wars, yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, those hands are gonna need to be red because Crimson Fists, so...
Dystopian Wars, even though like Spartan Games is bankrupt, I will say like if you're into naval stuff, Dystopian Wars is going to satisfy you a lot for those that are interested in naval stuff.
The biggest thing I had against that was their constant flip-flopping of rule sets.
Yeah, about that. I kind of feel like a lot of the problems stem from the fact that even the cards that you get for the model could be outdated. So
yeah, it's kind of not a good promotional thing.
Well, they kind of had a signed deal with to do the Halo stuff, and then it went under, so the company was not really faring that well.
Yeah, the Halo stuff. I think they were way too optimistic with how much they could sell for that.
But Halo players aren't really tabletop players.
It's a very different kind of audience, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, the models look nice. It's just that you're completely missing who's going to buy your miniatures.
And that license fee is not gonna have been cheap.
Yeah. Boris, my hands are also shaky, but you know, I can actually do a lot of...
Well, part of the trick is, if your hands are shaky, is put your elbows on the table and put your wrists together, so that even if one hand shakes, the other shakes with it and the mini shakes with it along with the brush.
I have a different thing to do. I basically concentrate all my mental energy on painting, and the hands stop shaking.
That can also work. But if you can't stop the occasional shake, that can help.
Yeah. I mean, when someone actually yells at me from behind, then everything is up in the air all of a sudden. Lately, from those precision kind of stuff, I've been doing mostly soldering, but I don't know, I feel like returning to miniatures at some point if I can find time, but it's very hard to do these days, at least for me. Oh Jesus, Undead before they split into Vampire Cons and we were still Dumb Kings and shit. That was 2001? That was the last time they were together?
You could play them together in Age of Sigmar, but...
Let's not keep talking about that. Like... It's there, but do we have to talk about that?
We don't.
No, we don't.
We can't, but we don't need to, so let's not.
Yeah, let's not.
Let's see,
Oh,
this
wait, no,
kneepad's
it's...
probably gonna stay. It's probably gonna go with red on that as well.
I'm mistaken, it was 1999 when was the Undeads were last playable as a whole faction.
Oh
yeah, I was going to ask you about one thing. The Lord of the Rings game. I'm still interested in that.
It's a solid skirmish rule set.
Yeah, but can you explain to the others how this is played? Because all in all, I think a lot of people remember that something like this existed, and it kind of fell off the radar. The model quality is top notch, and there's a lot of things to choose from. But
yeah, the Hobbit miniature game, it got turned into the Lord of the Rings miniature game, got turned into the Hobbit miniature game, which kind of did about as well as the Hobbit movies, as in it sold some, but it was not exactly the success parties had hoped for. And recently they've rebooted it as the Lord of the Rings rule set, as the general Middle-earth strategy battle game with like a book containing stats for all the Lord of the Rings units, and a book containing all the stats for the Hobbit units.
That means you could still use miniatures from 2000 and...
Yeah, I've got a bunch sitting here. Like, I started painting my old stuff, grabbing a few new minis to... And yeah, the Lord of the Rings minis are more true scale compared to the heroic scale of Warhammer.
I mean, the whole thing about, like, the wow factor of Lord of the Rings in 2000 is that miniatures were beautiful compared to the usual stuff.
Yeah, they had the Perry brothers sculpt a lot for Lord of the Rings range, and they are amazing sculptors. Even if one of them lost his dominant hand in a freak reenacting accident. He got blown off by a prematurely detonated cannon. So he taught himself to sculpt again with his offhand, and got just about as good, if not better.
Oh, mounted ring rates. That was a fucking amazing model for that time.
There are several of them, in fact. In fact, if you give me a second, I'm gonna roll over. And I do, in fact, have a mounted ring rate here. It's one of the models I have there. Got a bunch of Lord of the Rings stuff here in the cabinet.
Yes, see, this is the kind of quality I would really love to see on a Warhammer miniature, but
yeah, I've also got a bunch of other Lord of the Rings stuff here, like this fella, which you'll see show up in a bit.
Yeah, give me a second because there's a delay on the stream and it will, oh yeah. Yeah, I can recognize that.
This is one of my... I painted this about 10 years ago. Did rebasing recently, but...
Urkai Bowman, I believe?
Specifically Lurtz, the guy who kills Boromir.
Oh, isn't that from that set with Boromir and...
Yep, it also has a pair of Urkai carrying Merry and Pippin.
Ah, yeah. Oh, yeah, I remember that. That was a really nice set.
Yeah. Got a bunch of other Lord of the Rings stuff as well. Let's see if there's anything else cool here. Not that many. They're like... some of the plastic ones, which aren't quite as great in terms of detail, but still pretty good. This is also one of those I painted like 10 years ago, just like this one. Legolas and Gimli. Very flat poses. Because these are the plastic ones from the Moria starter set.
Yeah, but to be honest, even with those really dull poses, I don't know, they looked better in the regular fantasy stuff, and that was actually the sale factor. Like, for that time, they actually looked good. I would say Rackham miniatures at that time was the toppest quality when it comes to, like,
That's
style.
Confrontation, right?
Yes, Confrontation.
Rip.
Confrontation model line was absolutely fabulous, and rest in peace, really. The whole thing is that I think this is the fourth or fifth company that bought the molds, and they're still selling Confrontations, and the model have not aged at all. They're still beautiful.
That's generally the sign of a good sculpt, yeah.
Yeah, that's a perfect sculpt.
Yeah, the fine cast swap over, not great on many other Lord of the Rings sculpts. Like, I've got some fine cast Urkai, because I couldn't find the metals anymore, but...
Yeah, I think like a lot of companies changed to like resin, because most of the it's not the same plastic that was used back in the day. It's a very strange kind of resin, and I really don't like it. Like, there's something off about it.
The fine cast resin is kind of like, it's a resin, but you can use it in spin casting molds like the ones you'd normally use for casting metal miniatures.
Yeah, but
Well, most typical resins don't use
it's the
pressurized
texture.
stuff instead of spin casting.
Yeah, but it's something to do with I mean, shit. I should know this stuff. I'm a fucking chemist, but it's it's something with the composition that gives off a very bad texture. And I think Finecast is brittle as hell.
Yeah,
What-
also very
what was-
sensitive to bubbling.
Well, welcome to resins, yes.
Well, more so than several other types of resin I've seen from other companies.
I mean, you're talking with the guy that actually had to like do electrodes in resin, and we've tried several type of industrial type resins to actually put electrodes in resin, and all of them had the issues of bubbling if you don't shake out the bubbles correctly. So it's really just a issue of using resin.
Well, let's see. Some more blue in the backpack, I think, and then we're about ready to swap over.
It's really Jables, it's more so that the capillary forces tend to like trap really small bubbles in, because like resin is vicious as hell, and in water usually if you if there's like bubbles in your water, if you shake it hard enough, the bubbles will usually dissolve or disappear. In a viscous fluid like resin, it's very hard for them to actually go up, and it basically takes a long time. I think the common way to do those shaking is with an ultrasound, but I'm not so sure.
There is one other upset to find casting, that's that you can cut it fairly easily.
Well, yes, like resin tends to be.
Well, I've used hard resin from Battlefront miniatures for 100 scale World War II stuff. That stuff is brittle, but it's like heavy, and you can't cut it. Also gets carcinogenic dust if you try to file it, so you don't want to file it.
I have brain damage from all the lead I've been handling, so cancer is not a problem for me because I'm too stupid to get. But yeah, I don't know. Like, there's something about working with metal miniatures I still like.
Also the heft.
I don't really like merging the plastics and metals together using like modeling putty. I always had a problem with that.
That's an absolute pain in the ass. The worst thing even there is the weight often.
It's the weight, because the metal parts are usually the detailed parts, and usually the base is plastic, and the detailed parts are like arms or something, and it's always a bitch to get the putty to settle in the way that you want it to.
Yeah, I remember when I was this was I think like 15 years ago or so. I had a plastic Space Marine to which I had to attach a metal plasma cannon. So the arms and the backpacks are metal, the shoulder pads, the body, the legs, and the head are plastic.
Yeah. Shit, which model was it? Which Skaven model was it that actually had this same problem? Other than the... Oh yeah, the old stove vermin. No, wait, no, it wasn't the old stove vermin. It was something else. It was. Shit, I don't recall nowadays. But basically, the mixture of metal and plastic is something that is abhorrent, just abhorrent to handle.
Probably mixed up a bit too much paint there, but And yeah, Metal Devastators.
Oh yeah, I I remember those. God, I remember a lot of. Not so great. Oh, I think actually I remember what it was now. It was one of the. It was, I think, a Imperial Guard Demolisher had metal parts.
Yep, it's a plastic Lehman Russ battle tank, but the part of the turret,
Well,
the gun barrel, and I think the plasma cannon sponsons as well are metal.
exactly. Yep. Oh god.
I also built a hybrid Hellhound.
Well, I built a Vanquisher in the time where Vanquisher kits were not available, so I basically had to find a tube, a plastic tube that was the same diameter as the barrel, sew up the barrel, reattach it. It was actually a fun project. I liked how it came out. It's just
Fiddly.
it's fiddly. It's not really fiddly. It's more of this like, oh god, there's no counterweight to it. Oops. Oh god, see the magnetized stuff is sometimes doesn't work. That's the problem. It's like I've heard of people like trying to do the magnetized stuff on Necromunda, and that works because
I know a madman who has magnetized arms for his Eldar aspect warriors.
yes, there are some children of special need. Yes. You know, I just realized one thing with your base coating. Basically, you could easily leave places unpainted to simulate like you know, paint chipping off, or
Yep.
just have.
In fact, that's for like
take a
battle
little
damage and
spot.
stuff. That's what I did a lot with the Nurgle stuff. In this case, for these minis, I do a lot of that, keeping like the rough edges bare metal, so that really pops out like that.
I have to steal this. This is actually a good idea. I'm going to steal this.
I did magnetize a bunch of stuff. Like, most recent thing I magnetized was an Eldar Wraith Lord, where both the arm-mounted and the shoulder-mounted weapons, and the hand that could have the sword, are all magnetized, and the weapons can go both on the shoulders and on the arms, so I can, like, put, like, bright lances on the arms or on the shoulders. I've got the flamers and the shuriken catapults and stuff as well.
I mean, that would be one project I would approve of, because Wraith Lords do need a lot of flexibility. It's not like a cudgel like a Lehman Russ tank, where basically it's what is the best choice for a Lehman Russ tank nowadays? Is
Not
it still
sure.
the battle cannon? It used to be the battle cannon.
Haven't played 40k competitively in ages, so I am planning to do a bit more kill team, because that's
I
like
mean,
low model count stuff. It's nice and simple.
yeah. I mean, you know, the biggest problem is they kind of like made for like with 40k they basically made Armageddon like the baseline, which Armageddon was to be a side thing.
Let's see. I think we're gonna go to the red now, which means I need to move aside a bit. Grab the bottle of red paint. Which is also Vallejo model color. Cavalry brown. It's kind of like a brownish red. Gonna apply a brighter red afterwards for the highlighting and stuff. That'll make it really pop. The impractical part of putting my camera like this, I can accidentally touch it. But at least I don't need to worry as much about the angle at which I sit compared to how I what I'd show. Let's see. Let's just start with this hand.
I mean, in all honesty, I cannot be wrangled into like playing this. I could be wrangled in buying some models to paint. I really stopped giving crap about the competitive scene.
Most of my miniature game is also not competitive, but just like pretty laid back with buddies, so.
Yeah, I mean, well, that whole, you know, show in Blood Bowl, basically like, God, I don't really want to play shit competitively no more. I just want to play this for kicks, not for like leagues or stuff. So it's just
Also
like,
helps when you don't have a required schedule.
oh, fucking Christ. Well, I'm just going to keep the drama what happened of the stream, but in general, like, I think both you and me are just so tired of like competitive miniatures that we just want to like lay back and play a game of two with friends without any obligations.
Well, for me with Blood Bowl, the thing was more of a
Well, yeah.
scheduling thing and health issues thing.
Yeah, I understand with the health issues especially. Yeah, but it's for me it was like I really wanted something laid back, and I think that basically got taken over with Boris and Armello, because that's basically like a board game you can set up, play for an hour, yell at each other, and
Curse RNGs is when they give all your opponents all the good stuff.
Yeah, and then after it's done, it's like, well, see you next time.
Yeah, and you're not required to participate every time, even if people generally play weekly and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, and basically you can be a cheeky bastard, like, but without like repercussions, because I really felt bad for everyone that lost a player, because that in Blood Bowl is such a major blow if you actually lose a player, and some players just try to kill as many people on the opponent's team. It's like, do you really want those people to play with you, or do you want to basically like watch them suffer? Like, is it still like a game?
Well, there's a distinction there between just going for blocks for SPP and fouling for the heck of it.
Yeah, basically. I mean, in the end, it's going to be war of attrition when people like me will just say, I'm out, I just don't have 30 minutes to see the opponent stomping on my team all the time, just because I'm a threat.
Oh, poor little gutter runners.
Yeah. Oh, no, it was fucking Rat Ogre, because it's like, oh, Rat Ogre is down, let's kill the Rat Ogre. Like, let's basically put this team, I think it was 120k back, which is a lot. But yeah. Either way, oh yeah, speaking of Blood Bowl, that's one specialist game that's coming back for some reason.
Yeah, it sold well enough that they're making most of the teams in plastic now.
Yeah, and that's a welcome change, but I think they have to. They owe it a lot to Cyanide that is now dead. Mostly because like a lot of people like are suddenly, oh, Blood Bowl, that's a thing. Oh.
And you can play it on the tabletop and paint your own team colors.
Yeah.
You have the extra dread of slowly rolling the dice that condemn your players yourself.
Oh, Blood Bowl's Skaven team is fantastic. Like the sculpts are amazing.
Generally, the new sculpts are nice. Ooh. I've seen people like use them for conversions for like other armies and stuff.
Yeah, I've seen people use them as different like for different armies. I think I've seen the Red Ogre used a lot as a special Red Ogre, basically.
I've also seen people doing stuff like Mordheim barbands from it.
Yeah, that could work. Oh, is Mordheim getting their release?
No, but that's just like there's several fan projects for that, so. Some other new recent Games Workshop miniatures that are really nice for sculpts and like small painting projects is this Warhammer Underworlds thing, so Shadespire and Nightfold, which is all just small warbands. The game itself is pretty nice, fast. It's based around deck building and stuff. Your warband remains the same, depending on the faction you choose, but you build your own deck of objectives and like upgrades and powers. There's some really nice sculpts in those warbands. Some really unique stuff as well.
Oh god, don't talk to me about Beastman.
Oh, did you see for the new Blackstone Fortress box the Chaos Beastman in that?
Oh god. Will I be angry? I really like the look of the old one, the more like...
Oh, this is for 40k.
Oh.
Warhammer Quest Blackstone Fortress, which is Warhammer Quest but in 40k. Let's see, get this at the right angle again.
It's a hefty price tag on that. But let's see.
It's a board game like Warhammer Quest. Those are generally expensive, yeah.
I want to know, Space Crusade remaster when? Really? We need this.
Well, I am honestly expecting another Death Hulk, Space Hulk re-release next year, because it's the 30-year anniversary at that point.
Yeah. I mean,
And I'm suspecting they'll tie it in with the new Kill Team rules.
I mean, Space Crusade is such a... you know, those Beastmen are not too shabby, but it's still miles away from those original Goatmen I more enjoyed. Like, there's too much human facial features in the...
Let's see.
Yeah, I think the whole problem with Space Crusade is that Parker Brothers have a stake in it, but I don't know if that's true or not.
Well, I do know that Games Workshop is pretty much on a war footing with one of the biggest board game distributors around, Asmodee, who have bought up Fantasy Flight.
Oh yeah, I heard about the retaking of Fantasy Flight, which is surprising because the Star Wars games were just getting grabbed left and right.
Well, X-Wing had a bit of a dip, and the second edition isn't quite as successful as they were hoping, I think.
Oh.
Although they are
I did-
expanding it in terms of what's available in there. Because the new wave that they announced for that is gonna have Clone Wars.
That's interesting, certainly. Um, God, I could talk about Star Wars forever, given manager of the TV team, but it's more so that I really like the Edge of Empire because Edge of Empire gave you a lot of freedom to do stuff.
Do we want to add any other touches of red on this? Alright, purity
No,
seals.
oh yeah, purity. Do you buy your purity seals or do you sculpt them?
Well, they're part of the sculpt here, so...
Ah, okay. Fair enough.
And
yeah,
most modern
I see
plastic
that.
kits still have like spare purity shields that you can glue on, I believe, so...
Good. Good.
Nice and straightforward. No messing about making your own. Which is very
Yeah,
easily
fair
fucked up.
enough. I mean, I recall like old tutorials how to make them properly.
Let's see, is there any more purity shields on this bitch?
Oh god, that's fucking horrible. Those goals with football pads. Oh well. Never ever the proper goat, man. You'll get like WoW type Saturn instead. Oh well. But oh yeah, I was saying about the Clone Wars stuff. I actually think that if they would do the Clone Wars stuff like they did with Age of Empire, where you can basically do shit for either faction without having to, commit yourself to one. I like that.
It's just gonna be separate factions for them.
Ah.
They've already got they've got Rebels, Empire, Scum, which is all the bounty hunters and shit, including Black Sun and everything.
Of course.
And First Order and Resistance because new movie stuff.
Oh god, no, please.
They have to tie in with the releases, of course. It apparently didn't sell too well. People want the original trilogy shit.
Well, yeah, they want the prequels, they want the original trilogy, and they want the animated CGI stuff, because that actually was pretty successful. It's, I think it was one of the most well-received piece of Star Wars media after the original trilogy, even though the first episodes were really not that great. But a lot of people do want to do like Republic Commando stuff, and I don't fault them for that. So if there's a rule set for that, good for that.
Let's try to go back to the helmet a bit. Touch up some of the side bits there, because that'll look better also red, I think.
So wait a second. If Fantasy Flight games are not in the game no more, who has the right for
Fantasy Flight games are still alive, they're just part of Asmodee now.
Yeah, but who has the right to Warhammer Fantasy roleplay now?
Very good question. I know the Games Workshop is releasing their own new 40k roleplay set, so I'm kind of suspecting they'll do something similar for Age of Sigmar and just have the old Warhammer Fantasy roleplay again. It's like out there.
Yeah, because Fantasy Flight took over like developing it, which
yeah, the old 40k roleplay is dead.
Yeah. To be honest, I never liked Warhammer 40k role-playing games. Not out of a principle. It's more so I really don't like the Warhammer rules and all that much.
Right.
Having played that for 10 years when I was young.
Of course, I forgot one thing that should be red, and it's like the biggest part on the model.
The cape?
Yep.
Are you going to Yeah, are you going to do shades later with the wash, or are you going to
Probably.
try?
Depending on the area. For some areas I will. Maybe some pin washes. To accent some panel lines and stuff.
Cubicle 7, I've not heard of that company. Oh, speaking of like failing companies, I wonder how bad is D&D 5th edition doing, because I've heard like
Last I heard it was doing pretty solidly. I know my local game shop sells the books a lot. Have trouble keeping them in stock.
But what I've heard, like I don't know whether it's Hasbro or Wizard of the Coast, they're not really that happy with the way things are going, and they're trying to turn D&D into a board game again.
Well, there are D&D board games in the setting, have been for years, which I think is a nice way of using those settings with lots of detail you've got.
I mean, I was never a fan of what they've done, like at the end of when they took over the remains of TSR, and the first thing they released was the Dungeons and Dragons, the board game, as a kind of an introduction to 3rd edition. I did not like that.
I think what they're doing these days is, like, they've got board games that use the setting, but generally they don't use the core game's mechanics.
Well, I can only hope so. Like,
I've played one D&D board game, that was Lords of Waterdeep, which is quite nice. It's a worker placement game. Basically, you're influential people in Waterdeep, some of the masked lords, and you need to acquire adventurers to complete the quests that you want completed.
Okay, Margaret, let's explain because people might not be in tune with Forgotten Realms. Waterdeep is ruled by the Council of the Masked Lords, which are completely anonymous. They don't know each other. They don't know. They can only like do stuff, but they cannot reveal their identity. And for a long time, this was basically the system of politics of Waterdeep. I don't recall if the masked lords were elected or they were given a position by passing. But I think they were elected, right?
I don't recall exactly how it worked. I do know that there's one lord whose identity is known, the Open Lord, and they're like the public face of the Waterdavian administration. And I have a friendly local game shop nearby that sells this stuff. And there's also a GW actual store, which I occasionally drop by when I need something that the FLGS does not have on stock, or that's only available in like official GW stores.
And this turned into a TG recap from the last 20 years. Basically.
And I think with Tumblr implying Tumblr is all we need to say.
Well, the whole thing is with Tumblr, like, there are actually, like, comics and game dev blogs that use it, and the problem is the way worded they rule is that they can shut you down if they don't like you. Because nudity is allowed only if it's allowed for educational purposes.
Or artistic, right? Or...
No artistic nudity. That's the whole joke.
Well, rip.
Well, Tumblr is an interesting site because it started like a place to do art blogs, and in the end it was hijacked by politics, and now it's going to be all politics. I hate the community. I like the porn blogs. Ain't the community, ain't the SJWs, love the porn, simple as. Oh, yeah, and they did allow nudity if it's like they specifically stated like stuff like breastfeeding and gender reassignment surgery, which is
Well, at least
bizarre.
some people's fetishes will be intact.
God, someone is late to the party.
Gonna need some more red for this.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's looking pretty nice so far.
Yeah, just need to mix up some more and thin some more paint. Just like this Vallejo stuff, you don't want to use it straight from the bottle because it's just too thick.
No, it's way too thick. I usually use instead of a palette, I usually use like small pots.
Well, the advantage with this is like, I can just, every so often I just tear off the layers and I'll have a clean one again.
Yeah, but it's again the whole thing is I like the paints a little bit thinner than you do. It seems that your thickness is more in tune with the thickness of paints I used to paint on canvases with, and I use the like a more for painting miniatures. I use the consistency of recently wetted watercolor, so it's like transfluent, but not so much. Oh yeah, do you use God damn it. Do you airbrush your models?
Occasionally. I've mostly been using it for base coats and some terrain stuff. I am planning on using it for some other stuff in the near future, like I'm planning to paint some demon nets and basically first use zenithal highlighting with white, black to grey to white, zenithal highlighting, and then go with washes from there.
What
Or
about
glazes.
vehicles?
I don't paint many vehicles, so that's kind of easy. Like, I barely paint anything bigger than cavalry models, so...
Ah. See, this is different from me. I love painting vehicles. I basically like the reason I started doing Warhammer 40k is like, oh, Lehman Russ is actually like pretty moddable. So I started sticking all the crazy stuff on it. I made my own camo nets. Like, it was great to like give those vehicles character. I think that's my problem with a lot of models. I love giving models character, and the old metal ones, they were very hard to modify unless you knew exactly what were you doing.
And yeah, I do paint some tanks regularly, but they're a bit of a different size. Let me grab something as an example.
All right. Oh yeah, you. Oh god, what is the system you use? It's not.
The one I mostly use is Flames of War, which uses 1/100 scale.
There we go.
Like, here's an example of, well, technically not a tank, but a Jagdpanzer.
It's a tank destroyer. It's.
And some of you might recognize that the markings are not entirely historical.
Oh please, like, implying history. No, that's a really nice model. I like the detail work you did. You even did that. The crowd that gets in between armor plates, which is pretty good.
Yeah, I've got a few more, like, as a set here. I've got this one. Nice little Type 89.
It.
I've got...
I need a second. Like the stream is like 2 minutes behind.
Yeah, you're gonna see it in a
There
bit.
we go. Oh, there we go. That's pretty nice, yeah.
Also an M3. M3 medium, that is.
Ah. That's the Leaf variant, if I recall correctly, because of that machine gun turret on top.
Yep.
Because Granted didn't have that one.
They had a different turret shape in general.
Yeah.
Also, some other stuff. Like some people have already noticed the theme here.
That's Char 1 Beast, I believe? Yeah. It has to be. That's Sturmgeschwür 3, I believe, with the...
Stuk 3F, yeah?
Yep, with the 75mm cannon. Oh,
My final one is one I had to do some conversion work for, because there is not an some conversion into scratch building, but there's not an actual model for this one.
Is that actually a Tiger with the Porsche Tiger? Which
yeah, that was a Porsche Tiger.
Yeah. I cannot tell which one this is, the one you were holding.
Type 97.
Okay.
Japanese. It's a design that never left Japanese shores.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and there's not a wargaming model that is not a horrifically shitty 3D print for it, so I had to take another Japanese tank, I think. Type 97? I took another Japanese tank design that has the same basic hull shape, removed all the rivets because this type was welded, and scratch built the entire turret.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm not entirely happy with the turret, but it's gonna work. And I had to magnetize it because I couldn't get it to fit properly otherwise, because this hull has an offset turret, as you might be able to see, and this tank type has to have a center turret. Also, the markings on some of the turret sides for this Japanese tank, for this tank, these are freehand painted markings on the turret sides.
Oh, nice.
For most of the other ones, I had decals, but they were not yet available when I painted these for the other tanks.
Mm-hmm. Shinu Kai.
I think it's... Was it the Shinu?
It was to be the Japanese response to Sherman, but basically the Japan command, I believe, thought of them as too valuable to be deployed.
Yeah, they kept them on the Japanese mainland for when the invasion would come.
Yeah.
Which was probably a sensible choice.
Well, then 2 nukes were dropped, and then we came to a conclusion, not enough.
That conclusion only came several years later, and even despite MacArthur's best efforts.
Oh god. Even during Korea War, MacArthur was like, just like...
Nuke the Lux!
How about we nuke the belt between Korea and China and make the Chinamen pay for it? MacArthur, like, with all my sympathy towards him, he was a little bit crazy.
I'd say more than a little bit, yeah, but...
I mean, he kind of like was the Sherman with the nuclear arsenal, so...
Yeah, US Civil War Sherman was reportedly not a very nice man either.
I think that the problem with that is that they were not exactly sure how to wage a war that came to a standstill. Because it was the US Civil War was the first war that ground into basically trench warfare. Well, not exactly trench warfare, but it was basically infantry attacks against fortified position, but only in the east. In the west, it was a highly maneuverable war.
Kind of like, sort of like opposite World War I in terms of east-west, but
yeah,
with less tech.
In the West, if you read about the like operations in the Mississippi region, there was a lot of gunboat fighting, and there was a ton of just cavalry attacks on each other. There was very little attacks on fortified positions, exactly like on the eastern part.
Just like on the Eastern Front in World War One.
Mm-hmm.
Things were just too big to fortify everything. That was a place where cavalry was still incredibly relevant, and large gains and losses were a regular occurrence.
I mean, the cavalry in the east, because people mightn't think cavalry is kind of a strange thing in the Civil War, because in the east it was mainly used as a scouting force. And our favorite general, Jeb. Oh, a little bit of smudge there. Don't worry, it's rust. Or a blood splatter from a heretic.
Yeah, it's probably not gonna draw that much attention once it's red. And yeah, the barrel is not drilled. I'm just gonna paint it with black because I feel that often looks better than just gonna get it dotted.
Drilling a barrel is a little bit overkill on most guns, so...
It's very easy to fuck up as well.
Oh, definitely.
Off-center barrel drill. And especially in models where you can't just glue on a spare gun in that case.
Remember, there's no undo button in reality. If you fuck up for real. I've learned that with painting. On canvases. And if you want hard mode, do watercolors. You will hate yourself.
Let's see. Let's grab some bone color because we have some reliquary bits and some purity seal stuff to do with that. So, time for more Vallejo. Probably not going to need as much of this. And I'm going to keep this a bit thicker. Because otherwise it will not cover. That should work. Let's see. So yeah, for these kind of stuff, it's probably gonna be painted like this bone color, and then just gonna do a brown shade.
Yeah, that's the best thing. It's the bone color. You're using the bone color from Games Workshop?
No, I'm using Vallejo Iraqi sand.
Ah, okay.
Which is a color I also use for a lot of other stuff. For example, on a lot of my World War II tank models, not the ones I've shown, but a bunch of the others, like the Soviet ones. I use it for edge highlighting. Just a very light dry brush on the edges.
Ah.
Gives it that dusty and worn look.
Yeah. This wants the Ukrainian steppe look.
That kind of stuff, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. If because all of the like purity seal stuff is the worn parchment. Always. It's never. Don't ever use whites, like pure white, if you're doing purity seals. They have to be worn.
I would recommend never use pure white for anything except a highlight on very light gray when painting miniatures in general.
I think the best way to use white is on crystals.
Oh yeah, like gems and stuff and that kind of stuff as
Yeah.
well. Yeah, I use that kind of stuff for my Eldar stuff.
Well, Elder Prism, Fire Prism? Yeah, Fire Prism. Fire Prism has that humongous gem where you have to use the whites on the edges. But painting that gem is... making a gem that size look good is very hard because you need to show how it was sanded.
Oh, yeah, that's one of those models, like, I'm kind of glad I don't have that in my Eldar collection yet. Though I also have another model that I'm kind of intimidated to paint is a... what's its name? A Wraith Knight. My D&D players gave one to me. It's a really nice gift, but kind of intimidating to paint up.
Right, Knight?
It's basically mini Titan. Think a Wraith Lord, but about half
okay.
taller.
Yeah, I now see which is it. Oh, that's intimidating. That looks like an Ava unit. A little bit. It looks like a little bit like an Ava unit.
Yeah, it's got that agile Eldar look to it, but not quite as spindly as the Wraith Lord.
I mean, really, like, who is more weeaboo, Eldar or Tau? That's always the question.
I'd say Tau. Although Eldar do have the back banners and stuff as well.
I mean, it really depends if you like the old mecha stuff, or do you like the most wait, no. It's quite the opposite. It's kind of like a lot of the Eldar stuff has that sleek look from the newer mecha stuff, and a
I
lot
would
of
say it's
Tau
like
models
even
have
old
that.
new, but more like I'm gonna do something a little bit in between with slightly unthin pink, but I keep getting bothered by that little smudge, so... And yes, Eldar have guns that shoot shurikens. That gets you up a few notches on the Weibo meter. Right. Lower edge of the cloak.
Yeah. It's a little bit out there on the Weibo meter. Eldar was actually one of the choices I was making for collecting 40k back in the day. The problem was you cannot really customize Eldar as much. That was one of the problems, and the other problem was the codex, if I recall correctly. Imperial Guard had actual updates to the codex, and Eldar... How long did they wait for a codex after the second edition one? I
think it wasn't horribly long, but Eldar have had a bit of a history of, like, they were underwhelming for some time, and then, like, 5th edition onwards, they had occasional moments of horrific brokenness.
Yeah, I think 5th edition was the one when everyone just hated them.
I think there have been, like, 1 or 2 editions since where they were also hated because they were, again, broken.
It's still not as bad as fucking Tau with their shooting, but you know, it's a different kind of broken.
Well, when you make jet bikes, troops, and good, that kind of shit gets pretty bullshit pretty easily.
Yeah.
Well, they're no longer troops again these days, because you can just field an army without troops.
That actually is one of the changes I do like about 40k. Like introduction of armored companies and stuff like that, because running a pure armor army for Imperial Guard was not possible until, I believe, Imperial Armor rules, and those were unofficial for a while.
Yeah, the armored company rules and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I think it's time to add some bling here.
And running armored company by rules is actually pretty interesting because you have to basically plan your vehicles as oh shit, what will we do if infantry comes along? Which is why you actually had to use stuff like
Annihilators.
what? Yes, what are your words? Annihilators.
Bleed tanks.
I like that. I think that one of the biggest upgrades to Imperial Guard was the removal of the rule that made the Hellhounds explode when someone kicked them in the shins. Because in the old editions, Hellhounds had a rule called external fuel tanks, which meant that all glancing hits counted as penetrating.
Well, these days, armor values are no longer a thing, so...
Well, yeah, but that was like, I think, second and third editions, one and first. And basically no one wanted to feel the Hellhounds except when doing suicide stuff, because, well, it was extremely easy to score a glancing hit, and a penetrating hit on a vehicle that's a bad thing. So everyone just fielded armored fist companies instead. Much better choice for fast attack.
In the meantime, we're adding some bling options.
Are you using gold or bronze?
Gold.
Okay. Because some people say that usually the gold paint some manufacturers sell is a little bit too shiny, so they supplement it with a bronze, which is a little bit more muted.
Oh, this is gonna get a brown wash over it, which is gonna keep it a bit more muted again.
Ah, okay. Fair enough.
It's like the gold and the bone color, that's gonna get the brown shade again.
Mm-hmm. You should, Market, you should say the VOD of this, because a lot of people that want to learn how to paint will actually learn from this. And we don't want to give Games Workshop even more money by saying, hey, go to their YouTube, because they have tutorials.
That's actually a pretty good set of tutorials they have.
I know. I'm just, memeing. No, they actually up their ante with the level of tutorials. I remember the old ones being really underwhelming. Now they actually show all of the techniques properly.
And they have both high complexity and nice and easy tutorials for various things.
Oh yeah, and best of all, you don't have to leave your basement to actually learn how to paint. So yeah, for all those needs, this is the best option. You can stay at home. You don't have to interact with a human being.
Well, the delivery man when he brings you new paints, but
no, leave it at the door. Here's the money. Don't look at me.
no, looks like I was painting out of camera shot again for a bit. That's something I have to get used to a bit.
Yeah, it's a little bit hard to do things with a camera. You should actually look into how Big Clive has a setup for his workbench when he does all his electronic stuff, because he really can show exactly what he's doing. but his camera is on above the workbench. So
Yeah, you'll want to like have it on a kind of swivel or something.
Mm-hmm. But there's a good view of the electronics he's working on and good view of his hands, so you can actually see his workbench quite nicely. So which parts of the model are you going to bling out, other than, of course, pauldrons?
Pauldrons, probably like... I'm thinking I'm keeping the halo iron to keep it as an iron halo.
Really?
But I'm gonna bling up that little skull in the middle there.
Yeah, that might be... Because I've seen iron halos painted gold, which is... Well, I see like a kind of a cross between, like you have the spikes gold and base iron, or you have the base gold and spikes iron. So I've seen a lot of variations to it.
Well, part of this is also like, with Crimson Fists I wanted to go not too heavy on the bling.
Yeah, that's...
They're a bit more grounded of a chapter, and they far too regularly lose significant amounts of troops in heroic last stands.
What Dark Eldar's guns shoot? Slaves. Slaves and pain, if I recall correctly.
Also, poison darts, poison crystals, typically. So that you suffer but don't die, so they can take you as a slave.
Yeah. But if I recall, they have like...
They also have lance weapons, which is just energy beams.
Oh yeah.
Blasters, dark lances.
They have the lance weapons. Oh my god. Dark Eldar players were kind of like the most masochistic of the armies, because they waited so long for a codex.
And new models, but it's pretty damn glorious when they did finally show up.
Yeah, I agree. Same with Sisters of Battle.
Well, they still don't have a codex yet, and they don't have proper new sculpts yet. That's supposedly showing up next year, yeah.
Sisters of Battle is kind of weird, because they kind of did this weird thing where at some point they did that Inquisition split, and then they kind of like forgot about it, and then they did it split again. Games Workshop is somehow inconsistent with how some of the things work. I think that was the whole thing with Chaos Demons. They split them from Chaos as a whole, just because the Chaos Demons could work both in Fantasy and in 40k. So they could have a singular model line you can use in both settings.
Yeah, and they have their own little look and stuff for it as well. In fact, that would be this stuff.
Shurikens. Well, yes, if you're Dark Eldar, you go to the Sonic Academy of Special Forces with Coldsteel the Hedgehog and other fun people.
Yeah, that's that. I think the big question is, what else do I want to do? I want to I think I'm keeping the winged skulls silver. That's how they are on all the other minis, and I don't want to have them stand out too much. The cape is doing a good job of that already.
Yeah, the cape is very much attracting. That's one of the thing about when you're learning how to paint your stuff. Actually, learn color theory. You need color theory to know basically how to make sure the areas that are of interest are properly marked with just a hue or just a color, because otherwise you will have this problem of like sticking too many colors and it looks horrible.
Let's see. Still wet, so we can touch up a bit on the cloak there. I think I touched it or something. A little bit of a smudge black spot there. Alright, there's one more thing I can put some gold on. The little skull on the ammo feed.
Oh, are you not painting the ego gold on the pauldron?
I think I'm the winged skull. I think I'm keeping that silver. It gives a nice bit of contrast as well.
It's wings. Oh yeah.
If it were an Imperial Aquila, I'd paint it gold, but.
Oh, you're going to paint the Imperial Aquila golden on the chest?
It's not an Aquila. It's also a winged skull. This
so
model has no Imperial eagles on it.
God damn it! God damn it! Did they rob the skull mines again?
Earlier today I was setting up some of the Kill Team Gene Stealers, which are also like crawling over terrain and stuff. Was one of them like, it's crawling over like a doorpost, and of course there's like a vertical lining to the doorpost, which is just stacked skulls.
I mean, have you seen official Games Workshop terrain where there's chasms filled with skulls?
I have seen the Realm of Battle boards, yes.
Yes. Like, around my group of friends, the joke is that basically, in the setting, there is a constant war about the biggest resource that is needed for Warhammer 40k, and that's skulls. Every planet has a vein, and they constantly fight for it. You constantly need skulls.
Also, some people might notice here that with painting stuff that, like over here, this deepest fold of the cloak, that's still just black. I'm actually just going to keep that black because if you have it in normal tabletop stuff, you just don't see it, or if you do see it, it's so dark that it might as well be black because that will look more realistic in terms of shading.
Well, there are two schools of that. Is either like if you do shading, you want to keep parts black. If you don't do shading, you want to basically paint all of the model, and then you basically do not assemble the model as a whole at first, but paint
sub-assemblies, yeah.
Model, yeah, and then assemble it. It's two schools of painting, two schools of model assembly. Both are right. It's just whatever look are you going for. If you go for shaded, you can assemble the model and then use either smart painting, brushing, highlighting, washes to further give the shade. If you're painting the model uniform without shading, do it to reassemble.
At no sense there's not going to be kill, 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 or flames or checkers or murder on this model, because it is not an orc model. And it is not a Lamenter's model, because yellow armor with black and white checkers on the shoulder pads. They look nice, but...
What if it's loaded? Everything can be loaded.
I have considered making like a Deathwatch kill team, because I have a random sprue of that still lying around. And just having one of those marines as a Lamenter's marine. And it would be the one guy in the squad who would always be the first casualty.
That would be awesome. Oh, speaking of looted stuff, have you seen that gorgeous orc model? The looted... The
looted Carnifex?
No. The newest one, the newest release, the looted Lehman Russ.
I've seen several looted Lehman Russes, but...
Or was that on conversion? Because I've seen it discussed in TG chat.
Well, apparently the new chapter proof book is going to have, like, for non-competitive games, actual rules to loot existing units, so... So yeah, I think we've got pretty much everything except like the eyes and stuff painted. So
I don't think you painted one of those emblems on the cloak. On the
let's see, I've painted this
backside?
one. I've painted
uh,
this one. I've painted that one.
maybe
I've painted
it's-
that one.
okay, it's just the light then.
Yeah, lighting can do that.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think I'm gonna grab my Agrex Earthshade, aka Magic in a Pot. Alright, I did forget something to paint gold. Hilt and pommel. Well, not hilt, crossguard and pommel.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask, are you going to paint that gold as well?
I could try to go fancy and have some kind of power sword effect, but I've never had that really work out well. And this doesn't need to be like a display quality model, it needs to be tabletop quality for use in demo games, so you don't want to have like uber fancy when it's going to be moved around heavily and stuff.
Well, and the biggest problem with models is that if, like, I know everyone wants to make the army looks pretty, but paint chips if you move it around a lot. So
Well, actually, if plastic model's properly varnished, that isn't as much of an issue.
then I don't know. I've been using shitty primer because I've been using Games Workshop primer.
Old Games Workshop primer is pretty shitty, yeah. Modern one's pretty decent, but Vallejo is also good. Like, there's a bunch of companies producing good miniature primer these days. Which is a nice position for the market to be in. And yeah, this is for the store's demo force. As I said earlier in the stream, I painted a Gravis captain and a Lord of Contagion before, but they got stolen, so I had to paint new ones. Yeah, I think, let's see. For the wash, I am thinking. Yeah, I think I'm also going to apply the wash to certain parts of the cloak and the red armor. That's a bit of a pin washy thing. Get some of that shading in there.
Oh yeah, what size brushes do you usually use for painting? 0?
Oh, for this stuff I've got a size 0.
Do you do detail work with 0?
Nah, a 0 with a fine tip is good enough. And for like the rough work, like dry brushes and touching up base coats, I just use like, these are cheap, like you buy like a pack of 6 of these kind of brushes for €1 at like
Yeah,
the dollar
like-
store equivalent.
Don't use your expensive brushes at for dry brushing. Always use the really shitty ones.
Exactly. Cheap disposable brushes. Let's see, let's start with the purity seals because they're probably best dried by now. And you want to be careful with how much wash you apply, so you get the appropriate level of shading. That's just something you have to like experiment. You can just move the wash around when it's on there. Actually gonna add some on the seal itself as well. Give some nice definition in there. Parchment scroll here as well. It's not going to get a lot of shading because the edges are already there, but they're still dark. Oh, I think I did that out of shot. Yeah, also put wash on the back side of the purity seals that are attached to the sword arm because yeah, you want that on both sides there.
And this is where the magic happens.
Like the predecessor to this paint color, Devlan Mud, was sometimes referred to as Devlan Magic.
Yeah.
You can do a lot of really nice stuff with properly applied shades from washes. Like even with this, I just apply a little bit so it'll like draw things together a bit.
Yeah, but some people actually thin their wash a little bit more, like 9 parts wash, 1 part of water, so it would so it flows a little bit better into those crevices. It really depends on what you're going for.
Yeah, I like it a bit thicker. I can control it a little bit better.
I mean, fluid druids are a thing, so.
Yeah, for this, I'm also adding it to like the hands, where specifically into the edges there, so that I'm gonna highlight the tips of the fingers and stuff with a brighter red as well later. But this way, those edges will be more defined, which should look good.
Also, for those who want to try painting, be aware that wash actually takes a little bit to dry. It's
yeah, I'm probably gonna go work on something a little bit different once this wash is drying. Although it depends. I'm gonna apply it in a lot of places, so.
Washes, like most of the paints used for painting models, are acrylic based, and acrylics dry relatively fast. Washes are very water based, so it takes a little bit of time for the water to evaporate.
Yeah, that's why it takes a bit longer. Also why you can easily like move them around and get those effects as needed.
I mean, the best thing if you're like painting an army is save the washing for the last step.
Yeah, that's what I often do as well. One of the last steps or the very last step.
And just do it in bulk, because it's it requires you to change the brush to a wash brush, because
well, just a bigger, rougher brush in general, if you want like bulk wash stuff.
Brush, and I believe it also helps if you use a watercolor brush for washes, like again, like since they're more water-based, I found that water color brushes tend to be easier to control. The ones made from I think sable hair, or it's sable or squirrel hair that is actually like good for anything water-based. For acrylics, never use those hairs that will be ruined in just one use. So for acrylics, just use either like a nylon or any kind of an artificial brush, because those are actually designed to work with acrylics.
Well, these are water-based acrylics.
It has a lot to do to because on how acrylics interact with the hair of the brush. It has little to do with solvent. Like when I actually painted like on canvases with acrylics, I used like hog's hair brushes because they were quite resistant to the paint seeping into the hair of the brush, and that prevented it from being ruined.
Yeah, there's this kind of brush, like this is, I'm not sure that it's, Martyr is like the, don't recall
I
it.
think the worst brushes are sable hair, but I would have to double check.
For these kinds of washes, the same brush you use for normally painting your miniatures can work. But if you also, there's also like, some people use oil paints for like shading and washes.
I'm not too fond of oil paints myself for painting miniatures and for just painting in general. Really takes time to set them up.
You need to varnish the model, you know, it takes ages to dry.
All paints don't stick well on some kinds of plastics or some kind of bases. It's a gamble. If you're not knowing what you're doing, don't try.
Oil-based washes.
On the other hand, if you use actually a rough surface, oil paints tend to stick a lot better. So sometimes if you're like doing, because I've seen it like oil paints use large surfaces while painting like bigger models, bigger tank models.
Yeah,
but
for tanks like panel lining on tanks, it can really work for that.
Yeah, then it works perfectly. This is the first time since crack of someone doing something productive. Since crack, English, please, man. It's Marka then, so of course.
You.
Marka is like doing the paintings, and really, you really need to do more of these. And
yeah, I am planning to do more of these. So if people enjoy them, I'll happily do more.
I mean, we need to get more stuff, people involved from the TG Discord, because like it's good to have like some other people that have different techniques comment on what they do differently. I believe a lot of people on the TG Discord actually did paint model painting at some point, so
I know a fair few of them do, yeah. So yeah, I think it's just like, yeah, I just need to do the knee pads here, which is just going to be one very limited application. What I'm doing for some of those cases is like, it's what's called a pin wash, where you basically add too much wash there.
On the cloak, I would add a little more shade, like under the backpack, but that would be just me. Like, it's your model and your thing. I think that's where there would be a little bit of shade.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, I was mostly focusing on the fold, but yeah, now that I look at it from a higher angle, that area does need a bit of darkening. And like, this is a kind of shade that tends to run into the deeper areas. But what you can also do, instead of like, these washes have like a medium in there that makes them collect those areas. You can also just use thin paint in different ways that does not collect those areas, and you can do a glaze to like give a tint to a certain thing.
Requires a little bit more control. If you're feeling confident in your painting, use thin paint, because it gives you a little bit more control to where the shade is. But at the same time, if you make a mistake, that's done. There's no turning back. With wash, you can still apply a little bit of water, use a little bit of a sponge, wipe out your mistake. No more shame. No one knows but you.
Yeah, that's one thing I really like, especially for like painting things quickly to Just like tabletop level quality, not display level quality.
Mm-hmm.
Washers are your friend. You can do it pretty loosely. You don't want to over apply because then it'll drab glossy or even like kind of like fog up. But yeah, I think with this the washes need to dry now for a bit, and after that it'll be time for highlights on the blue, which I haven't done yet.
I think we're kind of reaching Barbara's levels unimaginable to man right now.
One more spot here on the cloak that I think needs a little bit more.
So, according to Bibble, implies work is a god punished. What?
Yeah, well, this wash dries.
You might want to swap up the water.
This is not exactly relevantly thick, and especially what I'm going to be working on next. There's a little bit of an in-betweener.
Are we going with the vampire next, or are we going to go with the...
Yeah, I want to go for something a bit not blue or red. Something a bit in between. For something like... like a nice change of pace mini. But I'm not going to fully complete it, probably. And now
well, if we're going for Nurgle, we need dirty water.
Now I need to figure out which green I used again on my Nurgle minis, because that's very relevant.
Are you using like greens like most other people do, or are you using like some other vomit puke colors?
Mostly greens. Let's see if I still have that. Thing somewhere. Let's see, 40k folder. Nothing there. Nurgle Chaos. I think I stored my recipe for this, painting this somewhere. I do have a work in progress shot of these guys here at least. Alright, I think it's that color. Yeah, it's I remember which color I used for this now. It's the US tank World War II color. It's a brown violet. And I immediately grabbed the red bottle without being able to see the text on it, which is nice. So yeah, that's and with this color what we're gonna do is we're just gonna touch some armor plates. I could actually even leave some of the edges a bit dirty because that'll work for this, like it's damaged, battered. This is not freshly painted armor. Because that's not how the Death Guard roll.
No, this is like years and years. Oh, that's a puke. That's a pretty puke color. That's perfect. Thank
the U.S. Army of the 1930s, 1940s.
No, my dad's Willis Jeep is isn't it Olive Darb, I believe? Or was the Olive Darb one British?
Well, the British one like well, both of them assumed various shades depending on which
yeah, Olive
type
Darb
of weathering you have.
Be a little bit more darker. Olive Drab, yeah.
Olive Drab is what the US was like. This is gonna get washed and stuff as well.
Titanic White.
Sadly, I do not have that color.
I mean,
I have Bone White, but not Titanic White.
Titan White is a meme. Titan White is the reason why you don't really want to use Titan White is that the whiteness it gives is only good if you combine it with other color. On its own, it's way too bright. It's unnatural white, basically. It's the white you have from a strobe lamp, basically.
You need to know when to apply it and when to combine it with other things, basically. Which is the case with a lot of colors, but some colors are easier to deal with than others.
Again, like color theory, learn it. It will save your life.
And even beyond that, when you're painting miniatures, one thing to also take into account is like, especially if you're a beginner, certain colors are just by their nature, because of how the pigment works, more difficult to paint properly than others. Like bright yellows, bright whites, very bright reds, that kind of stuff is a pain in the ass because of very thin pigments.
If you want to shade the yellows, use oranges, and but don't use reds or browns, because then it will get you mud, basically. It's there's a whole like if you ever took up actual painting, there's a whole guide on which paints mix with which because of how pigments interact. It's not a clear and cut system like in digital painting, like I'm doing right now.
Well, for miniature painting, like, manufacturers generally ensure some compatibility in their line, but like still, oh, I want to have a brighter shaded color, don't add white because you'll end up with a pastel tint and that kind of stuff. Sometimes you want a pastel tint, but again, it depends on the effect you're going for.
Do you ever undercoat with white? That's a rare thing.
I know some people here who swear by it for miniature painting. I personally just generally don't, because I like working up from a black and being sure that if I miss something, it's just painted black so it won't draw attention.
Exactly. I much prefer it. I've tried undercoating with white, it didn't work out. Undercoating with black worked for me just fine.
One thing I have been looking at is, I talked about it earlier, is the zenithal highlighting and pre-shading stuff, where you start off with black or dark gray, and then either using dry brushes or with an airbrush and spraying from above, you apply successively lighter shades so that they already catch the detail, and then with thin paints or glazes you add tones to that.
What are you going to use for the metals here? Are you going to go with...
Some of them are going to stay like this, some other ones are going to go with some, I think I have some bronze.
Yeah, I would think this model just screams, I need some bronze here.
Yeah. Works well on Nurgle stuff in general.
Oh yeah, will you add a little bit of rust patches?
Nah, this is probably going to get an overall brown wash and stuff. So that's going to give a lot of that effect as well.
One of the things I like to do with Skaven, with clan rats and clan slaves, is add a little bit of rust to the weapons, because usually those guys are not going to be using like high quality weapons. Those are for storm vermin. You don't get to use them. So
well, even with washes you can get some nice and dirty effects. I'll just grab an example of some very quick and dirty miniatures that are basically just like, base coat black, dry brush with one color. So I'll just drop one of these.
I mean,
don't see it, so.
If you want to give your army character, remember, except if you're Mordian Iron Guard, your army will be dirty. Your army will be worn, your army will show fatigue. So make sure that your guys have some manner of dirt on them. So some people have like a little bit of customized weaponry.
Like these are just some quick and dirty skellies I'm showing off now.
Oh, spooky.
These are mostly just like base coat black, dry brush with that bone color I was using earlier.
Oh, that's some really neat rust. I like
That's
this.
just like I painted the weapon silver, and I just carefully applied Abrax Earthshade.
Yeah, but you did like drops of it, because
Yeah,
I see like
I spread it out irregularly, and that gives you that kind of effect.
yeah.
Just like, for example, on some of my 100 scale tanks, I also do that on like Soviet armor and stuff on the hulls, to get like some kind of a mottled, dirty effect with the black wash.
Yeah.
I think I just dropped. Well, yeah, there it went. I dropped one of the skeletals, but I've recovered it. Specifically, this guy. Yeah, those are very quick and easy paint jobs on those, and it's a pretty decent tabletop quality, I'd say. Like, once you learn how to like properly apply washes and dry brushes, you can do a hell of a lot with that really quickly.
Oh yeah.
It's like magic when you want to paint entire armies, or even just units.
Spikes will be. Are you going to go with bone white in the spikes, or are you going to go with bronze?
This one is going to stay silver, because it's a metal spike. As you can see,
But
it's attached to the armor.
One
But the one on this shoulder is going to be bone.
Okay, yeah, because it looks like it's puncturing the armor, so it's
Yeah, well,
broke.
that's probably some kind of mutation.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a bunch of Skelly boys that need base coating as well. Maybe I'll paint some of those on a later stream. Once they're base coated, that's more like a demonstration of how you can speed paint stuff, probably.
Yeah, I think you should do that as soon as possible, because a lot of people have problems painting the skeletons properly. Not because they're scared of them, mostly because it's a hard art to actually give bones proper. I wouldn't say texture. It's more like shading to make them look good.
The definition. Something like a lot of people I see just
Yeah.
you spray them white or bone color and then just washes. But I use dry brushes on these skellies to like black and then dry brush the bone color over it, which gives them that really worn look, and then the brown wash over it to tie things together. They're a lot less clean than most skellies I've seen.
And that's what you should be. What should most people like understand how to do properly.
It's an easier way to paint them as well. So
because yours look properly worn, and that's the look you want to be going for. Not every skeleton in an army has that morning time to get his bone polished, his calcium taken, his skull whited. So instead they're kind of looking like a little bit worn down.
yeah, they're probably skellies that have been going around for a while. They're just not freshly been cleansed of all the other stuff.
I mean, maybe they just ripped out of someone's body and you're like, I didn't have time to clean myself.
Nah.
Yeah. Bring back Skeletor.
That was pretty fun pre-show back in the day.
Oh god damn it! I missed a lot of those things. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Like, we're getting back with the amusing pre-shows lately. The hype machine things are going, like with Potato now in charge of hype videos.
Yeah, Potato has been doing an amazing job on hype videos.
Our discount Australian vet from the string.
Who actually
first string
delivers on time, which is...
Wow. He
Let's
hates
see.
himself every night for this, but he delivers on time. But it still has, like, we have not reached the levels of that fit, I don't know, a pre-show, or rather intro, yeah. The fit intro with the Boris He-Man, that was amazing. Oh yeah, how do you do your bases? Do you just paint them, or are you that person who lovingly sculpts every detail on the bases? Like adds a little bit of sculpt there, adds a little bit of brush there.
What I'm
some
doing with
grass.
these is I use a Vallejo texture paste to add the texture instead of using sand. I think I have it here. Yeah, it's like this stuff which is air drying.
Sorry if I bombard you with questions, but this I think, like, if someone wants to start sculpting and painting, they really need to know like what they're dealing with.
Yeah, the classic tip would be use sand, and sand is like the cheapo option. But if you're investing, that kind of stuff is great because you can even like sculpt a bit of like up downs and stuff like that with it.
Yeah, because the cheapo option is using glue and sand, which is basically just have like a thick layer of glue on the base, then dip that layer of glue in sand, and voila.
And then maybe another layer of thin down glue on top to seal it in, because...
Yeah, but for all those places where you didn't get the
yeah. And what I do with these bases, how I generally paint them for this army, what I did is I painted them a dark brown. And then I did a dry brush with a medium brown to give them the texture. And then I add some tufts of just like static grass, not even tufts for these ones, just like apply some patches of static grass using super glue.
Static grass is that grass you can basically use an electric field to shape, right?
It's the actual little stickies, not it's not like just the green powder.
No, not the green powder. I've heard there's like a grass that you could shape with the like electromagnetic
Yeah, that's
charge.
static grass. Like
Okay.
an example of I generally don't shape it. I want like it a bit more like trampled and stuff. But for example, here's an Urghide that has like the static grass on his base.
Yeah. Like.
I also added an S-rune on this banner, by the way, just because Saruman, but.
A lot of people in diorama sculpting love to use static grass to just show a little bit like clumps of grass. That they use the magnetic field then to make it stand up.
Yeah, there are some people who like kit bash their own devices to apply it to have it stand up, but that's kind of a risky business in my experience.
Why? You don't like electric fields?
Like kit bashing electrical appliances is, if you're not an expert on that kind of stuff, not something I'd recommend.
I short circuit a fucking 20 ampere battery today, so I don't know.
You're a bit more of a professional for that, but like...
Oh god, no, don't call me that ever.
You have experience working with electricity, let's put it that way.
Yes, okay.
You know enough, you have enough sense to not like set your whole hobby area ablaze with, by short-circuiting the thing when you first turn it on.
Yes, I usually hide behind a wall before I plug stuff in, yes. What did you do? Mild static shock. Mild static shot. Well, it really depends. I can tell you, like, making making electric furnaces is basically the moment like where the big boys shine, where there's actually like proper amperages and proper voltages running through this. So
You get the proper zappy stuff.
Oh, very zappy. Zappy that could kill you. Because you've probably like seen some of those coil furnaces where you basically insert something in the middle of a coil and it heats up instantly. That stuff you use like a lot of specialized components, but that stuff is amazing. I almost got like a permit to build one at a university, but then they kind of like went, no, you know what, no. We needed it for basically smelting, since I work with lead and lead electrodes. You have to smelt your own lead, and I've done a fair bit of smelting lead in the most interesting manner with a vacuum pump to like have the lead go into a special glass tube to make tiny electrodes for measurements. And guess what? It forms bubbles like no tomorrow, and it's very hard to actually get a good electrode done.
And Necro with painting parts of this model before assembling it. That is an option, but for this, like, also to get like the lighting and like the parts where detail is more needed, right? I just had it assembled first, and this is not a very complicated model in terms of like hard to reach areas.
I think this model looks good, like assembled, then pre-based, and because I think there's a lot of areas where there will be a lot of shading, so those hard to reach areas could be just counted as shaded, basically. But if you have like machines, that's a different problem, because you have the underside of the turret, the bottom of the legs, stuff like that. That's actually hard to reach when you assemble it.
There was one model recently that I was working on where I did really regret that I fully assembled it before painting it. That was for my undead, a coven throne, which is like this big stone throne carried by a host of spirits, and on top of the throne, like in between like parts of it, sit a bunch of vampire ladies, and I saved the vampire ladies to paint for last, and I'd already fully assembled it. That was a mistake. Need to remind myself occasionally to keep this thing in shot.
Alright.
Painting the vampire thoughts was pretty interesting. It's a bit different from what the stuff I usually paint when working on an undead army. Let's see, is there anything else here that needs to be green? Meanwhile, taking a look back at this model that's having its shades drying, you can see that most of them have dried. There's a little bit left at the helmet, and especially here at the cloak, where there's a bit more shading going on.
Coven Throne is interesting. It's as interesting as the old Dark Elder Raider one with the bitches at the...
The one from Astrobale Vect.
Yeah, there we go.
Vect and his bitches. Some of the most popular, like, special order separate models, those slave girls.
I know it's like the reason why that model was constantly out of stock in some places is that everyone wanted just those little models. They didn't really care much for anything else.
Disregard the fact, acquire bitches, basically.
Yeah.
Let's see, a little touch screen there. Honestly, not sure how much I'm gonna add of brass here, because with the bone, I'm probably gonna make the cloak red, I think.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
But I could also do purple, but
in this day and age, how dare you be so misogynistic to treat women as mere objects? Seriously though, like each time I hear like people complaining about the model of a naked chick being like a sex symbol, like every fucking male is a perfectly sculpted six-pack. Like seriously, are you going to complain about that?
Necro, the Cavern Throne is not the new Black Coach. The Black Coach actually recently got an entirely new sculpt, which is pretty damn badass. Cavern Throne is like an HQ unit, like it's like a hero on a monstrous mount kind of thing.
Huh.
Yeah, the new, like all of the like spooky undead got a whole bunch of new stuff, including new models for a bunch of classics, especially that Black Coach.
Wait, so Cavern Throne is kind of like a model similar to the old Inquisitor throne, basically, where it's a floaty throne thing.
The old Inquisitor floating throne was a walking throne, Karamazov.
Oh yeah, Karamazov. There we go.
This is carried upon a host of spectral ghosts, like with riders and stuff coming up from the ground. And then it's just like a stone, like, staircase ending up in like at the front there's like a metal basin filled with blood, and at the back there's like nice piles of cushions and stuff where the Vampire Queen sits, lounging. Of course, it's still GW, so there's a skull in there among the cushions, and at least some of the pillows are actually filled with entrails, but...
God damn it, the Games Workshop.
This isn't even like an extremely new model. I think it's pre-Age of Sigmar. New Black Coach is really badass, though. Also, one thing I'm planning to do with this model is like these cloud things. I'm going to paint them as a very light grey, then highlight them a bit with white, and then I'm going to add a bright green wash to them. Oh, maybe a purple wash. I think a purple wash doesn't look nicer.
Oh, so like a Biowind.
Yeah, like Poison Wind Brazier, something kind of like that.
Yeah, just like that.
And one other model that's gonna probably gonna be done with washes is this little fella over here. Kinda hard to get into focus.
Although,
but there is a Nurgling being squished underfoot here.
Of course, we can have a Nurgling model without a Nurgling being abused somewhere. Also, I would use those if this was a Skaven like model like the Braziers. I would probably paint like a very bright green.
Yeah, I think for the other Nurgle minis I painted for the shop, I used the purple for like the smoke cloud things. And I do want to keep things consistent within the Force. I think I also used purple for like the tentacly bits that some of those models have. Alright, there's still a few more bits here that might need some green now that I look at it again. At the belly. Where the armor has actually burst, showing his gut. Which is some kind of weird biomechanical abomination because Nurgle. And Chaos in general. Let's see. Yeah, I think this will work. Yeah, this is still drying. That's the thing with washes. They take a while to dry. One thing that's going to be like probably the trickiest part of this model is by the end, this model I mean the captain, is I'm going to have to freehand a fist symbol on his shoulder pad.
Well, good luck with that.
I've done for all the other ones and the previous captain, so...
Yeah, I've seen the ones you've done on tanks, so it's you can do it. It's just
I think I'm actually pretty much running towards the end of my planned time slot as well now, and I do need to do stuff early tomorrow. And we're pretty much done here, waiting for washes to dry on the main mini, and I've pretty much completed the green stuff on this mini.
yeah.
So I think this is a pretty solid spot to call it for today. So thank you, Sul, for hanging out with me.
No problem. I can do it again, but I think it would be better to bring out Lazy or Alice or someone else.
Well, whoever's
next time,
available
because-
when they do it next time,
Yeah,
which I'm gonna have to see when I can plan it in some more. But I am planning on making this a fairly regular thing.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Maybe sometimes I'll also do stuff like batch painting, so how you can quickly paint a whole unit of models.
That would be nice because if you're doing a whole army or you're playing 40k in these try times, that's something you need to know.
Yeah, one thing I'm considering is I might start. I have a bunch of the old Space Hulk Gene Stealers.
Oh yeah.
I might paint. I've based a bunch of them today, including the Space Hulk Broodlord, and I might be using them as a kill team, and I'll probably like paint them in a single batch.
Oh, speaking of which, is that Gene Stealer limo still coming, or did it come out? Did Gene Stealer come?
I don't think I've heard anything about the limo. They might have that as a surprise because their codex is coming soon.
Please.
They did.
Please.
They are getting bikers though, at least.
Yeah, but we need the limo.
We do
it's
need the limo,
something
yeah.
We waited for.
But yeah, thank you, Sul, for hanging out with me.
No
Thank you,
problem.
everyone who was watching and interacting in the chat.
It's your up.
So, thank you, everyone, and goodbye.